Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's because as I put in my notes here, I don't have anybody else who kind of has that perspective from being on both sides. And the overall topic is that in a relationship between, I said, really need to find somebody from a council. I had a fellow in mind from Scottsdale, but he's the one who recently passed away. And, and he had the perspective of being on the commission, Park and Rec Commission. And I still have another possibility for a council person from Phoenix. That one I won't probably know for a while. So I did have a lady lined up from Teresa, and she ended up with a student, so it's kind of been a tough nut to crack. Okay. Well, I think it'll be interesting because in the past it has been a kind of a nuts and bolts kind of pretty dry session, and so I tried to interject some extra stuff this year because I've sat through them in the past; they've been pretty dry, and I was hoping to do some things this year, and I asked them to do some things. We got Andrew's participating. Our Andrew, he's going to do the so-called scary speech about the open meeting law and the rest of it, so everybody's on the same page. So he knows that one. He's got a whole presentation on that. And then the second one is on advocacy at the state level and everything. There's a lady coming from State Parks Foundation with the ringers with that'll be and then another C.J. Carton, who's the director for Maricopa County Parks coming. And then Bob Frost, who used to be the director of Scottsdale. So that's the second session. And the third session is on relationship between commissions and staff. Fred Bedell from our commission is going to sit on that one, and a few people from else come around.
I thought I tried to tell her that they
Oh, you're more than welcome to. Sharon Dennis, I know, wants to go early because I got to head over for the whole day, so I'm going to head over first thing in the morning because I'm responsible for all those sessions. You can arrive with me. I'm not sure what Fred's going to do. They're probably both going to stay for the day.
So I'll probably plan on bringing myself over.
Okay. Because you need to get back. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, you're welcome to attend any of those sessions. If you end up wanting to go in the morning, let me know, and we'll get a lunch ticket for you. Okay? Thank you. Hey, Dennis?
Sorry.
Right now,
There? Good stuff.
I heard you were doing some work down in Argentina or something? Can we get together and talk about that?
Absolutely, would love to.
Okay.
We're, it's a real interesting story. It's real. And it's all through the city of Grace, who I built the last two buildings for down in Scottsdale. And we're going over to a new meeting center for the That's part of the last meeting. Yeah, I did a pre-construction trip. And we're going down August 1st. October 1st. So yeah, that's a big experience. Okay. What's that? Okay. I get pretty the probably the my Okay. Thank you. There's a great
Organizational behavior, the speed of change, getting things done. This is for my home, and this is for my work. If you are in charge, if you feel
You're delicious.
Yes.
I believe you when you said marriage. need to come up and say hello to the exalted ones.
Who's got the first name of that lady? Huh? The first name of the lady?
Oh. Yeah, she's still a kid.
I'm not asking many more questions.
I understand. How are you, sir?
Next time, please get back to me and make some changes.
Let's take it. Let's throw him on.
I got some of
We're good.
I was talking to Mark Iacovino about this. It's funny, when we were there, I made sure that
Sir, how are you? Pleasure. Not how about it? It's great. Be in your presence, sir. And how are you these days?
it was perfect. Sometimes you see one.
Oh, yeah.
Why that
You asked me
hard.
a while ago.
But it's almost more like
Got forward.
Hey, Kate. Hi. How are you? I had no
Saturday. So I've already volunteered in mine. I'll need to find out what resources we might be able to use. Yeah. All right. You want the whole thing? All right. Let me see. All right. Let me read it. I'll make sure I'm connecting myself with something. This is crap. It's our website. So have you been watching the conspiracy in the paper? Do we need to go to have lunch? I can fill you in on all the real stuff that's going on.
Whenever you're downtown.
Oh my God. Oh my God, Andrew. And, our lovely National Times reporter wants me to start using terms like what do they have over in Iraq? IED?
Oh, IEDs?
Yeah, instead of dry ice bombs, they start using things like IED.
Could you drop the word jihad every now and then?
Thank you very much.
They like it.
Now, if I could do the little... further away from you. Squirting this way a little bit. I think it's hilarious. Hilarious. Switch back. So what are you guys doing?
Well, this
Is this your cover for your solitaire? What are you buying these days? I'm not going to hold on to Okay, Tuesday, because you know what I was going to say? What makes you think I'm going to give a damn about any emails that you get? I'm not going to know. I don't care. My life is real simple. I don't care.
He's telling me to do
I sent that email. Yeah, you did. Hold on a second. I sent that email over to GCU to Dr. Stilwell about getting together about your program, the doctoral program that you were talking about, just to do some light talks about it.
Okay.
Haven't heard anything from it, but just so you know, I dumped my resume, everything there. I've already been offered the job. So.
Excellent. Congratulations. Well, it looked like they already had you
Grand
on.
Canyon University.
Yeah.
And then they told me that by December they expect me to be in my own doctoral program.
And
You know, I do this thing that they call me doc. Oh, because I can be in the way of the Oh, you do? I had no idea, doc.
you can't be a doctor.
Well, he got, I didn't know you could sue yourself. I'm impressed. Congratulations, doctor.
Yeah,
This
is your assault?
Because I've seen a couple of lawyers that could get themselves out of a paper bag, and you tend to do the same too.
You're seminator.
Don't you dare complicate my argument.
But I've never seen it.
You walked out again on me this morning at the Chamber breakfast.
No, I did not.
Did you hear my joke? You did? You were gone. Had to get up to roast that a little bit. I can't. And here's the joke. So what do you call a lawyer with an IQ over 50? Oh, I'm sorry, Kate. All press lawyers except federal.
I almost brought a baby head away.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
My office. They were right there and they...
Anyway, enough of hello, sir. How are you? Notice how I'm not telling you any stories
No,
about
I'm right
the...
next to the building. Kind of like a jeep. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah, but I don't like that.
The babies are...
At lunch.
They look like... They were...
And it was very fine lunch.
expensive.
At least they can pay.
No, it actually the captain of Rainbow
Already? All right. Yeah. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our town council meeting. Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for the invocation. Ms. Gratz, welcome. How are you?
I'm fine, thank
Good.
you. Good evening. Let us pray as one. Holy Creator God, we gather here this evening as one body, praying that you will be with us in wisdom, compassion, tolerance, and discernment while we discuss the issues that affect our community. As we make our decisions, may we be good stewards by not losing track of the needs of our people and the common good of all. We are humbly grateful for all that you have given us, both as a community and as individuals. May we never forget your constant mercy and care as we say, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ms. Gratz.
Thank you.
Ms. Gratz is from Church of the Ascension here in Fountain Hills. Move on to public appearances, and first item is introduction. I'm sorry, we need to do roll call. Roll call,
Mayor
please.
Schrum?
Here.
Councilmember Cantino? Here. Councilmember Leger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Hanson?
Here.
Councilmember Dickey?
Here.
Councilmember Elke?
Here. Right now, thank you very much. On to introduction of our newest staff member and director, Paul Mood. Good. Welcome, Paul, to the team here. I'll call on Rick. And Rick, any words for us, or would you like me to introduce Paul?
Well, I think, Mary, either one would be appropriate. I've known Paul now for weeks. And, 2 weeks, well, a couple of weeks before that, got to meet him. But nevertheless, it seems like he's melded right in with the team here at Town Hall. We're very excited and pleased to have Paul. He comes with a great deal of experience directing capital projects, engineering, and planning. So with that, just ask Paul to come on up if that's okay, and if any of you kind of describe his background and introduce himself to you. And if you have any questions for him, I'm sure he'd be pleased to answer those.
Good. I know I've got a little more background on you, Paul. If you don't mind, I'll read this. Pretty impressive, and certainly welcome you to the town of Fountain Hills. Paul, as mentioned, comes from the town of Gilbert, where he served as their capital projects administrator since 2003. Managed Gilbert's capital program when it was the fastest growing municipality in the nation, as well as during the economic downturn. He was responsible for the aspects related to management, design, and construction of a wide variety of projects such as municipal offices, community centers, fire stations, police substations, transportation, traffic signals, water and wastewater infrastructure, as well as parks and trails. In addition to updating and administering the Gilbert's capital program, he worked closely with the planning, building, and engineering departments, coordinating developer-related projects, as well as making presentations to Gilbert's council and the advisory boards on a regular basis. And Paul's received his Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Engineering at Michigan Technical University, and is a professional civil engineer licensed in the state of Arizona, and is a member of the American Society of Civil Engineers, American Public Works Association, and Construction Management Association of America. And of course, now he'll be our director over the town director of development services as of August 9th, where he'll oversee engineering, streets, building safety, planning, zoning, environmental, code enforcement, and GIS. So yes, come on forward, Paul, and welcome. This is the town council.
All right, thank you. Just like to thank the town manager for the opportunity given to me. Hopefully my experience will be put to good use to benefit the town of Fountain Hills. I've only been here 2 weeks, but the staff has been very kind to me, very dedicated, hardworking staff, so I'm pleased to work with them. We have a beautiful community. Hopefully we make it beautiful for the future as well. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions
Questions?
for Paul, council? Good, and I know we wish you great success here as well, and welcome. Thanks, Rick. Now we've got a presentation by Deputy Town Manager, Finance Director Julie Getty regarding the Town of Fountain Hills fourth quarter budget report for the period ending June 30th, 2010. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, for this opportunity to share with the council and the public the preliminary financial report for the fiscal year that ended on June 30th, 2010. This report has not been audited yet. The audit is scheduled for the week of September 13th, but we don't expect it to be much different than what you're going to see this evening. Whoop, wrong way.
Oh, that was quick.
Okay. On this screen, what we have is the revenues for all the funds, and what I wanted to show was the variance between the different funds, the actual revenues versus what is budgeted. The general fund, you can see, was down $1.3 million, or about 9%, and that's in the revenues. Primarily that is due to local sales tax being down about $500,000, building permits, vehicle license tax. Of course, the state sales tax was down as well as our interest earnings. So that was the reason for most of the decline. In the downtown excise tax fund, not down too much, that's primarily sales tax. Grants, there's we didn't get as much money as we were expecting, and we were expecting money for the fire station, as well as we always allow for miscellaneous grants that in case they come up. So we did not get any of those grants. Capital projects, primarily the difference there is there's $4.5 million that we had budgeted for the mill and overlay on Saguaro Boulevard, which we did not go forward with, as well as stimulus funds that we had budgeted for but did not need. The revenue variances, again, local sales tax, vehicle license tax, the state sales tax was down almost $100,000. Construction grants, $2.3 million, and again, the stimulus funding and the mill and overlay. This is just a chart showing the general fund revenues. The general fund is our primary operating fund. The general operating fund, which pays for most of our operating costs, and you can see comparing with the bar all the way to the left was fiscal year 08-09, and then the bar in the middle is fiscal year that just ended on June 30th, 2010, and you can see that all those revenues are down from the prior year and slightly less than what was budgeted. This is a chart that just breaks down, shows a breakdown of our local sales tax revenue, and they represent more than half of our general fund revenues. And of that portion, the wholesale retail makes up almost half of our sales tax, and that was down about 3%. The second category, the restaurant and bars, that was actually up 3%. And then our transportation, communication, and utilities, that was actually up from the prior year. Expenditures for all the funds, you can see that the corresponding reduction in the expenditures with the reduction in revenues, that the expenditures were reduced as well. The general fund budget is shown the revised budget, that in the fiscal year when it became apparent that the economy was not recovering, we made some budget adjustments of about $873,000. So that added to the reduced expenditures of $300,000. That made up for the difference in the general fund revenues. And again, in the grants fund, well, I'm sorry, let me back up to the downtown excise fund. That variance, meaning what we didn't spend, was we had budgeted $250,000 for a development agreement that did expire, so that money was not spent. And again, in the grants fund, that was funds that we either didn't get, which was for primarily stimulus or miscellaneous grants, and the fire station, so we didn't spend that money as well. In the capital projects, again, more stimulus money. The Shea project, the climbing lane, was an ADOT grant, so that project is being done with ADOT funds and not town funds. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop me at any time if I get going too fast. And again, these are the expenditure variances. The general fund variance is due to budget reductions, including layoffs, $2.3 million in construction grants that weren't received, and the Saguaro Mill and Overlay project that we didn't move forward with, as well as the climbing lane and then the fire station relocation. General fund expenditures, this chart shows the breakdown of the expenditures in the general fund, and the police and fire make up almost half of the general fund at 44%. The development services, which includes zoning, building safety, code enforcement, that makes up about 16% of the general fund. The community services, which includes parks, recreation, seniors, and the community center, makes up about 18% of the general fund. Administrative services, which is 19%, includes the town manager, finance, the volunteer program, human resources, economic development, information technology, and again, that makes up about 19%. The actual, this is a chart that shows expenditures by department, and it shows that all departments responded to the decrease in revenues by cutting their budget. Every department came in under budget, and the total general fund expenditures was 98%. This chart shows expenditures by program, and this is for the HERF or the Streets Fund. The HERF, or the Highway User Revenue Fund, depends on state shared revenues for revenues and is used for can be used for street maintenance. The revenues in that fund were down about $43,000, but the expenditures were under by about $220,000. With program budgeting, we can see what programs were higher and lower than budgeted. This excise tax economic development fund, this fund is shown by line item, salaries and benefits versus by program. This fund depends on local sales tax for funding, and that was about $292,000 that was received last year. The budgeted expenditures, again, included $250,000 as part of that development agreement, and that is why it is down, the expenditures are down from budget. Development fees are derived from building activity, which has slowed significantly over the past 3 years. The variance in the streets is due to a transfer of developer contributions made for traffic signals at Palisades. That contribution was actually made a few years ago, but this is just a bookkeeping transferring the money back into the development fee fund. And development fee expenditures, there was only one project that was budgeted last year out of development fees, and that was for traffic signal upgrades. The other expenditures that are in each one of those categories is just the residual from the development fee study that carried over into last fiscal year.
go back to development C1, please?
Yes.
Mayor, thank you.
Expenditures or revenue?
Revenue. I guess I was trying to figure out the percentages. So let's say the streets you have, the budget is 74,000, the year-to-date that came in at 181, is that how that is?
Yes.
So what's the 29%? Like, because isn't it more, shouldn't it be like more than 100%, or how does that work?
Mayor, Councilman Dickey, yes, and up on the screen, you can see that it's changed. It's actually 245%.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the one that you have, actually, yes, it should be 245%. You're correct.
Thank you.
Good catch.
Capital Projects Fund. Capital Projects is funded with a portion of construction sales tax. $475,000 went into that fund from the sales tax last year, as well as stimulus funds and transfers from other funds. In addition, if there are any surplus general funds at the end of the year, that gets transferred by policy over to the Capital Projects Fund. And this year, or last year, we anticipate there's about $100,000, a little more than $100,000 that will be transferred from the general fund into the Capital Projects Fund. And this shows expenditures by program as well. And it shows that the climbing lane is paid with the stimulus money, that's the $1 million. And then there was also an expenditure in contingency funds, and that was for the taxpayer refund. This table is, the town has an adopted fund balance policy that sets aside funds for unforeseen emergencies or capital project planning. These funds are currently invested in the local government invested pool in government securities. All of the funds are either not available for appropriation, for example, like the general fund, or they're restricted for specific purposes, all the other funds.
So Julie, on there, it shows the larger items, capital projects, just under $10 million in capital reserves.
Mayor, that is correct.
And then the general, the operating budget fund is 6.6 million?
Correct.
Okay.
Again, thank you. It's a reminder that there may be adjustments made by the auditors, but we don't expect anything significant. We're hopeful that the recent economic activity that we're seeing has indicated that the town will not have to do any more budget adjustments in this fiscal year 11, but we will monitor to make sure that the economy just keeps moving. And again, this report's available on the town's website under the Finance Department or Division reports. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Julie, on the last slide on the bottom, it talks about the surplus. So we obviously made some dramatic changes as we went through and managed through our fiscal year last year, and you were able to meet the budget, and then in the end we came in 100,000 surplus, so that goes into capital. Is that correct?
Mayor and members of the council, yes, that's correct, and it was with a lot of respect from the staff and from the council for allowing us to make those budget adjustments, and we did, and we ended the year with about $130,000 surplus in the general fund.
Okay, yeah, that was a very difficult year, and I know we have a challenging year this year, but kudos to you, staff, for staying on top of it and keeping us, council, engaged and on top of things so we could help make those changes happen, reductions, difficult choices happen when needed. But one thing of the fund I don't see, where does it show up for the rainy day? Is that part of the general fund?
It is part of it's actually set aside as a separate fund, and it's actually because a rainy day fund is, if we needed to use it in an emergency, it's actually appropriated.
Yeah, okay.
So it is there, but it isn't appropriated. It's not set aside as a reserve fund not to be appropriated.
And what is that about, approximately?
I think it's $1.3 million.
Okay. So we haven't touched that either, right?
No.
Good. Councilmember Dickey.
Thank you, Mayor. Julie, thank you. I wanted to mention your week in review today that you sent out, and just so that we can have some good news too, that the July activity, restaurant, and also overall retail activity, if you look at the last 3 years, We haven't gotten back up to 07, 08, but we're higher than 08, 09, and 09, 10. So hopefully this is a trend, and we look forward to continuing some good news as we move down the line. Thank you.
Any other council questions or thoughts on the year in review? Councilmember Leger?
Thank you, Mayor. With respect to the mayor's last question, on your previous slide, general fund balance, reserve balance, 6.6 million. The 1.3 is part of that, is rolled into that number, isn't it? I mean, isn't the reserve is like 5.5 plus 1.3, which nets out to what we're seeing here, the 6.6?
I'd have to double check on that. I'm sorry, Mayor, Councilman Leger. I can't recall. I know we had to appropriate it, but I can't remember if it's set aside in the 6.6 or if it's included in it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'll have to get back
If
to
we
you.
could have that clarification.
Yes, I will.
Good. Thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you.
Appreciate the hard work. All right. Before we get to call the public, wanted to mention many folks know, or if you don't know, that are watching on Channel 11 or here, we had a tragedy in town with a 2-year-old drowning here in Fountain Hills. So it's a good opportunity for us to make sure to ensure everyone is on top of watching their children, in particular around water. And this week, our first responders last week and this week certainly had a hard time, and Fountain Hills Cares was there comforting and directing people to the appropriate places for assistance, and that's all appreciated. And the fire department this week put together a drowning risk factors one page just to solidify the importance of watching your children around water. So our town manager is going to put this up on our website as well, so I encourage you to go to there. And of course, the month of August is Drowning Impact Awareness Month, as the fire department and others have been making everyone aware of, and we read into the record of proclamation last month, making August Drowning Impact Awareness Month, and it certainly makes a huge impact when it does occur. So let's hope we never have to have that happen here in our town again. So watch your youth and kids around water, please. And thank you for our Fountain Hills Fire Department and the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office for being there, doing their best to save a life, and just wasn't possible, unfortunately. On to call to the public. Any speaker cards tonight, Bev?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you. We'll now move to the consent agenda, and I'll request a motion to approve items 1 through 9 as listed.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, roll call, please, Bev.
Councilmember Dickey?
Aye.
Mayor Schlum?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Elke?
Aye.
Councilmember Cantino?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson? Councilmember Leger?
Aye.
Mayor 7-0.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to the regular agenda, and item number 10 is consideration of appointing 3 citizens to fill vacancies on the Strategic Planning Advisory Commission, SPAC, for each a 2-year term expiring June 30th, 2012. And I move to appoint Audra Kester Thomas, John T. McAvoy, and Barry K. Spiker. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all those that applied as well. It's a great and important commission, and it's done a lot of great work, and they will continue to do so. If are either Audra, John, or Barry here this evening, we'll recognize you.
Audrey.
Audra?
She's over there next to
Oh, there's Audra. Hi, Audra. It's nice to meet you. No. Thank you for continuing on with our SPAC. And good luck to John and Barry as well. So thank you very much, Council, and thanks to the committee for doing the work and interviewing the applicants. Item 11, presentation with possible direction of staff regarding River of Time Museum, construction of a shade structure on town property adjacent to the museum. Cost to be paid by the River of Time Museum through privately donated funds, and authorizing the town manager to execute any documents necessary to carry out the council's direction. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is an application by the River of Time Museum to build a shade structure over their south patio. The museum has conducted fundraisers in order to accommodate and accumulate enough money to cover the cost of the installation. And the shade structure is intended to allow the museum to hold functions and/or events outside rather than being confined to only using the indoor space during the hotter months. The proposed location of the shade canopy is on town property. Therefore, the construction proposal must receive approval from town council. Planning, building, and facility staff have met with museum representatives, outlined the procedures necessary for council's approval and for receiving building permits. The town attorney has drafted a resolution and an easement agreement that would permit the museum contractor to construct the shade structure on town property. The museum raised all the funds necessary for construction of the shade canopy from private sources. The structure will have an 8-year warranty. Staff recommends that council authorize the town manager to execute any documents to allow the shade structure to be constructed on town property adjacent to the River of Time Museum, subject to the stipulations in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Can I get a motion from council? I don't have the language up here in front of me. I'll look for a motion to approve authorizing the River of Time Museum to construct a 16-foot by 25 by 18 by 27, 442 square foot shade structure on town property adjacent to museum as presented this evening, and direct the town attorney to draft and authorize town manager and town clerk to execute any documents and take any steps necessary to carry out the council's direction.
Second?
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for Bob? Comments? Speakers? Thank you. Any speakers on this item?
No, sir.
And Bob, just clarify again, it shows it's in that enclosed area that's currently open. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So it's
kind
not
of
in
an odd
the,
shape.
we're not talking about any other areas like the circle and
No.
that sort of thing where we've talked about
We made
shade
sure.
structures, or at least folks have talked about that in the past. But thank you. Good. Well, it's very generous of the donors as well, and adds value to our town and uses obviously for the museum. It'll be a nice addition. All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you. All right, now we'll open a public hearing, and we'll hear items 12 and 13 together regarding an endorsement by the Town Council of Fountain Hills for a bingo license for the American Legion Post 58 located at 16837 East Parkview Avenue, Fountain Hills, Arizona. And looks like Julie is going to talk to us about that. Welcome, Julie.
Well, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The American Legion Post 58 is requesting endorsement by the town of Fountain Hills for a bingo license application that they have applied with the Arizona Department of Revenue. Endorsement by the town's local governing body is required prior to the applicant submitting the bingo license application to the Department of Revenue. The proposed days and times of games will be 3 days per week, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday, at their location on Parkview Avenue. Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation is aware of the application and is neutral on this issue. Representatives from the Legion are in attendance this evening and available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Julie. Is there any speaker card on this one?
Yes, Mayor. Roger Deland.
Come on
D'Angelo.
forward. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Town Councilmen and women. My name is Roger DeAngelis. I'm the commander of Post 58 American Legion. And we are here for the endorsement of the Town Council for us to obtain a license to have what's considered as bar bingo or slingo. What I'd like to do is ask a couple of questions and then answer them prior to you making a decision. First of all, what is bar bingo? Bar bingo is can be run two ways. Either one with a full card where you slide, and there's like 25 numbers on there, or they have a new situation that's you peel it back, and there's B-I-N-G-O with a number on it, and you still roll the ball, and you call the numbers out, and once you fill the card out, you have bingo. Very simple. What is the payout? Normally, they could change from game to game of how much we would take in and pay out to the participants. Normally, it's anywhere from 50-50, 60-40, 70-30. In other words, if you took in $100, you paid out $70 and we keep $30 for our funds. How often we play, you've already got the list on that. Who participates? Now, this is a situation where a lot of people thought that if we're asking for a license to have bar bingo, and that it would be open to the public. Well, it's not open to the public. It's for members and guests only. And as you know, we're a veterans organization and we're a charitable organization. And what we're asking is that everybody who comes in to play must show an ID card, including myself, who's the commander, must show an ID card to come in to play bingo. And the reason for bar bingo, help our funds. We need funds just like everybody else does, and it builds up our coffers so we could be very generous to all of our charitable organizations. I could go on and list all the charities, but we only have 3 minutes. And I thank you for your time and hope we get a good response. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, any comments or questions from council on this item? All right, looks like we're looking to move to approve endorsement of the bingo license application for American Legion Post 58 by the mayor and town council of the town of Fountain Hills. Are we all in favor? Indicate by saying aye. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Cassie. Ginny, we're nobody else on the call on the public. Thank you. We'll close the public hearing and move on to item 13, consideration of endorsement, Town of Council of Fountain Hills for a bingo license for American Legion, as presented.
So moved. Second.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, questions on this item? Got a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
Thank you very much. Item 14, consideration resolution 2010-26 and intergovernmental agreement with ADOT for a highway safety improvement program grant for various traffic signal safety upgrades totaling $26,580. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We're pleased to present to you a grant that we received from the Arizona Department of Transportation. This will accomplish traffic signal improvements at 8 of our existing traffic signals. The signals are shown on the board, all of them. Basically, the signals that do not need to be upgraded are the 2 signals that are in the Shea Climbing Lane project, because those are being upgraded in that project, and our 2 most recently installed signals at Sunridge Palisades and at Saguaro El Lago. This grant will accomplish 3 things at these traffic signals. Number 1, we got a couple locations where we're going to upgrade from 8-inch signal bulbs to 12-inch signal bulbs, so they'll be more visible. A couple locations we're going to add new signal heads, and we have the big part of it is to change out traffic signal bulbs from incandescent bulbs to LED bulbs. LED bulbs are much more, as I'm sure as you've found in your house, are much more efficient in using electricity. They last longer, and so we don't have to get out in the traffic and change them as often. So we're pleased to present this IGA from ADOT with you. This is a 100% grant. You don't get those very often, but this is only for materials. But our street department personnel and equipment will be able to do most, if not all, of the labor on this.
Very good. Thank you, Randy. Any speaker cards on this item?
No, sir.
All right. Look for a...
Mayor?
Yes.
Move to approve resolution 2010-26.
All right. Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. All right. Any questions for staff or Randy? Randy, I know the LED lights are very intense. They have a lot of benefits. Intensity is probably one of them because they're more visible and longer lasting, and it's great to have a grant to pay for it up front. Fountain Hills being a community that values dark skies and that sort of thing, are we going to be careful to ensure that there's not a lot of light spillover into the residential properties adjacent to where these lights are today? Because I know already today there's, you can't get around not having some impact on those areas, but I just want to make sure we're sensitive to that.
Certainly, Mayor, we'll be watchful of that. In if we get complaints from residents and that type of thing, we'll review the lighting intensity of it. In general, I mean, these are fairly focused lights. They have a long shield on them, and so we're hopeful that they will light up the road, but not so much the adjacent neighbors.
Excellent, thank you. Councilmember Leger?
Oh, I was just motioning focus.
Green light, is that what you're saying?
It's my understanding that LEDs have a tendency to be more focused, more pinpoint on the target. Then there's less diffusion of
You are
that.
correct, Councilman. Yes.
And Councilmember Brown, is that what you were going to?
Same comment.
All right, good. Excellent. Well, congratulations on getting the grant, and thank you very much for obtaining that for our community. We got a motion and a second. Any other comments? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you very much. Item 15, consideration resolution 2010-29 and intergovernmental agreement with ADOT for project number ARRA CMFTH-0006A, bike lanes, pavement preservation, Shea Boulevard for Fountain Hills Boulevard to Saguaro Boulevard, providing for the termination of intergovernmental agreement IGA JPA 02-191 and transferring the remaining funds to project number ARRA CMFTH-0006A. Now, if I got any of those numbers wrong, do we have to redo this? All right, welcome back, Randy.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We have on the overhead a showing of our upcoming grant project on Shea Boulevard. You'll see the starting at the very far left is a sidewalk project, which is a couple years out. We haven't even started on that yet. From a joint project with Scottsdale. Then we have the Shea Climbing Lane project in blue, which is currently under construction. And if you've been at all on Shea between Fountain Hills and Palisades here in the last 4 months, you will have seen that. The next in yellow is this project that we're talking about in this IGA, and we've commonly referred to this as the Shea Gap overlay because it fills the gap between the climbing lane overlay and the Shea widening at Saguaro overlay. So we received really good bids on the Shea climbing lane last spring. Construction's way down, and so although that's tough news for contractors, that's very good for municipalities who are bidding projects, and ADOT who's bidding project in this case. So we are able in these actions to deobligate our stimulus funds, known as ARRA funds, from the Shea Climbing Lane project, and to move that to this Shea Gap overlay project. What this will do is this will be overlaying eastbound and westbound Shea Boulevard from about Technology to near Fountain Hills Boulevard. And we've also moved a bike lane and median project and are going to bid it combined with the overlay. There's 2 gaps in the median on Shea Boulevard, and this project will construct the curbs as well as the landscaping and irrigation on those 2 sections of median, as well as it'll construct the south bike lane on Shea Boulevard. So this in addition to making the surface a lot smoother, it also has other safety and aesthetic improvements on Shea Boulevard. The big part of the project, of course, is the mill and overlay, and we'll be using a 2-inch mill and rubberized asphalt overlay, just as we are in the Shea Climbing Lane project. And this is we were currently in design. 95% plans have been submitted by our consultant Parsons Brinkerhoff to ADOT at the current time, and so we're hoping for approval of this in maybe the next month or so. Be happy to answer any questions you have on this.
Yep, good. Thank you, Randy. Any speaker cards on this item?
No, sir.
All right, thanks. Guess first we'll look for a motion to approve Resolution 2010-29 intergovernmental agreement with the Arizona Department of Transportation, IGA JPA 10-169-1, and approve a letter of termination of IGA JPA 02-9 or 191.
So moved.
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any questions for Randy? Councilmember Leger?
Thank you, Mayor. Randy, if the design is completed as you anticipate, when would you estimate construction would start?
Well, I have given up trying to estimate when ADOT takes projects to construction, and realistically, they're in the driver's seat from this time on. It's one of my best guess. I'm talking November,
10, 11?
I think. Yeah.
2011?
No, 2010.
2010?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm guessing sometime this winter we'll be going into construction.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Councilmember Dickey?
Mayor, thank you. I know I mentioned this to somebody, but I don't remember who, if it was you or anybody, about the fair. Do you think there'd be a way to work this around that?
Yes, in the project specifications, they note the special events in Fountain Hills, particularly the fair in the fall and in the spring.
In our last project, ADOT was managing or is wrapping up now. It did take a month and a half or so longer, roughly, I think it was, than was anticipated. Do you know what the length of this project would be, roughly?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I don't recall that.
Not yet, okay. And
I mean, it has it, but I just don't recall it offhand.
okay. And again, the project, obviously that gap piece has largely been unfinished. Just as portions of Fountain Hills Boulevard are unfinished, there's, soft shoulder and right, actually this area, there's deterioration along some of the road along the solid white line there. So what will we end up with on the westbound side? What will that look like?
Mayor, Council, what you will have is a rubberized asphalt overlay surface. So the two driving lanes, both westbound and eastbound, will be rubberized, 2-inch rubberized asphalt surface. It'll look very similar to the new asphalt on Shea between Palisades and Fountain Hills Boulevard. The shoulder areas, we're going to use a seal coat, so it'll look black, but other than that, it'll be about the same.
And then in the median area, that'll now be curbed there?
Yeah, yes, sir. The median will be curved and be landscaped.
Okay, that'll look nice. But both sides of the road are treated with the new road surface.
Yes, Mayor.
Terrific. Good. All right, any other questions or comments? Councilmember Hanson?
Thank you. Randy, just to clarify, the town funds that will be used for this are already on deposit at ADOT, so there's no more additional town funds that will be going to that. Is that right?
Mayor, Councilman Hanson, that's correct. Now, of course, any funding above the amount of the IGA, the committed federal funds, the town is responsible for. So if bids came in excessively high, we'd be back to you discussing that at that point. But presuming that the bids are within the construction funding, yes, all the town funds needed for the IGA are actually on deposit at ADOT. In fact, should bids come in low and the construction actually cost less, the first money's return would be most of the town's funds. So.
Great. Thank you.
Good question. All right. Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second on this item. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
All right. Thank you. Item number 16, consideration resolution 2010. I didn't just do this one. Yeah, this is the next one, right, guys? All right. Thank you. 2010-31 regarding amendment number 1 to the town's existing intergovernmental agreement with ADOT IGA JPA 090521, reducing the federal STP funds to $1,855,042 and local funds to $112,130 for the Shea Climbing Lane project.
Mayor, Council, this is kind of a companion item to the previous one. In addition to the letter on the previous item, ADOT wanted a intergovernmental agreement to transfer the funds out of the Shea Climbing Lane project that were not needed. I should note to you that the
the figures in the staff report are not correct. The figures in the IGA are correct. We wrote the staff report from a more preliminary IGA version. So basically, this one is needed to accomplish the one you just approved. Because
Good. Any speaker cards on this item, Bev?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Councilmember Dickey.
Move to approve Resolution 2010-31 for Amendment 1 for the IGA with ADOT for the Shea Climbing Lane project.
Good. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Leger?
Randy, you mentioned there's a discrepancy between what you have and what we have. Do you have those numbers in front of you? Can you share that with us, please?
Mayor, Councilman Leger, I do. If you look in the staff report, the dollar figures in the original IGA are correct. Under Amendment 1 for the federal STP funds, that increases from $1,855,000 and some to $1,897,000 and some. And the local funds at 5.7% increase from $112,000 and some to $114,000 and some.
Thank you. So does that reflect additional savings on the original Shea Climbing Lane? That's what it would appear, the moving of the stimulus dollars to this new project.
I believe you're correct. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, that's what I think it equates to. Well, good, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. So it's a 1.897 instead of 1.855 and 114 instead of 112,000. Do we need to amend our motion at all? Andrew, we're good? Good, and the question for this, we have a motion and a second, so questions from council is, one for me is, you know, obviously we have monies for a new project. Thankfully the staff are working with MAG and others to make sure that we could maintain the stimulus funding in Fountain Hills and apply it to another area. Obviously we talked a lot about Saguaro Boulevard, and this is going to, obviously there's needs on Shea Boulevard as well as other town streets. I'm assuming it's going on Shea Boulevard because, you know, it's a shovel-ready project. And
Mayor, this is a needed project. It's a much smaller amount than we actually need to do Saguaro Boulevard, so that's why we didn't apply it to that, as well as the fact that Shea is a road of regional significance and that type of thing. So
yes, that's what MAG is looking for, is road of regional significance, just so public's wondering why it isn't going on Saguaro Boulevard. That's why it's not going on Saguaro Boulevard.
This would be a small part of it.
Right, it's not enough to cover it all. Good. Any other comments or questions? Well, good. I commend the staff for making sure we maintain these dollars and are leveraging the savings on that climbing lane to benefit the Shea Boulevard further, so thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you. Thanks, Randy. Item 17, consideration of Resolution 2010-27, amending the existing Village Bazaar shared parking agreement for the purposes of allowing an increase in restaurant space within the plaza now known as Plaza Fountainside Plaza Waterfront. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. When the Village Bazaar Plaza was originally approved, the proposal did not meet town requirements for parking. A shared parking agreement was entered into between the town and the developer. In exchange for the developer building additional parking, the Splash Park parking lot, on the town's property and agreeing to a 6,000 square foot cap in restaurant space within the plaza, the town council approved the plaza. The reason for the cap is that the plaza was underparked for the size being proposed. Retail uses must provide 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of space, where restaurants are required to provide 20 spaces per 1,000 of publicly accessible space. Therefore, the more restaurants you have, the faster the parking is used up. The agreement contains a condition that the developer agrees that the plaza parking lot be used by the general public during town events without restrictions. It also allows the plaza to request reconsideration of the restaurant space restrictions if and when conditions change. There was no limitation placed on the space for retail or service uses. Over time, the plaza parking agreement, as well as other conditions of the plaza site plan, gradually eroded or violated,
And the two primary problems were the issues with the loading area being eliminated, and the restaurant space in the plaza was allowed to grow to over 7,500 square feet. Rather than close them down, staff agreed to work with the plaza owners to reestablish the loading zone and to keep what restaurant space they had. But whenever possible, the town would expect reductions in the restaurant square footage until they were again in compliance with the 6,000 square foot cap. So when the coffee shop closed, the plaza owner was unable to reoccupy that space with another restaurant. During the course of the past few months, staff has worked with the plaza owners to resolve those issues. Staff recommended that the applicants hire a parking consultant to review the parking situation using the newly adopted shared parking model provisions in the TCCD zoning district in which this plaza is a part. The applicants agreed and retained the firm of Carl Walker, Inc. to perform a new parking analysis of the plaza using the shared parking model. The parking consultant's final report is attached to your staff report, and it contains the conclusion that the plaza could be allowed to increase the restaurant space to a maximum of 9,000 square feet using the shared parking model without adversely affecting the parking situation in the plaza or the surrounding area. And this is what the council is being asked to agree to this evening. The amended shared parking agreement will allow up to 9,000 square feet of restaurant space, continue to allow joint use of the plaza and splash park parking lots, and require that the loading zone be reestablished. Staff recommends approval of Resolution 2010-27, amending the Village Bazaar shared parking agreement and allowing up to 9,000 square feet of restaurant space within the plaza, subject to the stipulations outlined in the shared parking agreement. And the applicants are present.
Thank you, Bob. Do you have any speaker cards on this item, Bev?
No, sir.
All right, good. We get a motion on this? Anybody want to read the suggested motion?
Mayor, move to approve Resolution 2010-27 for the purpose of amending the Village Bazaar shared parking agreement and allow up to 9,000 square feet of restaurant space within the plaza known as Plaza Fountainsides, Plaza Waterfront.
Thank you very much. And a second, good, thank you. Questions for staff or the applicant? Councilmember Dickey.
Okay, Mayor, Bob, when you say that it was gradually became violated, the rules, how did that happen? Was that something that we kept approving or people?
Well, it was a combination of a few things. Mostly it was existing restaurant space that expanded patios outside their normal spaces. Most of them were done with permission, some were done without permission. Until it became a problem, we kind of tried to just let things go because of the times. But when it became a problem, then we had to kind of step up.
Okay, Mayor, Bob, the shared, and I don't know when I read the report, technically everything probably the way so that's why I have to ask you. But as far as sharing, does that have to do with the time of day that they use it? Because I know when we talked about it here with the movie theater and all that, it was because certain hours something would be going on, certain hours something else. So is this going to have stipulations of what kind of place can come in, or can it be something that's open at night that's going to be open at the same time as like Euro Pizza and Grateful Bowls and such?
Yeah, the way the shared parking model works is it takes the various use types, which are maybe retail, maybe office, maybe restaurant, takes into account the hours of operation that they're typically open. So yes, restaurants would typically be open later at night when the storefronts are closed. So that's how they share the parking. So what you're saying is correct.
So Mayor, so is there going to be some sort of a stipulation on what kind of business can come in, if not now, down the line, so that we would be saying that they couldn't come in, and then we would have the knowledge when something was going to be done that this was actually going to interfere or do something to the parking?
Well, right now, there's no stipulation like that, other than it's a retail plaza, and they would have typically retail uses or office uses that are typically open during the day, other than the restaurants, which are also permitted uses there.
I'm sorry, Mayor, one last thing then. The loading area will actually be, that's going to be fixed, the problem with that, in addition to saying 9,000 square feet is okay?
Correct. One of the stipulations in the agreement is that loading area be reestablished before they're allowed anymore.
And Mayor, one last thing. We did get a letter from someone who was opposed to this, and I was wondering how the other folks in the plaza, if there's been any input from them.
I have not gotten any input from anyone in the plaza other than from one of the restaurateurs who wants to expand.
Uh-huh. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, Mr. Brink is here, right? If you wouldn't mind coming forward, I wonder if that same question, you might have some feedback on the existing businesses in the plaza. I know I've talked to a couple of them, and they said they don't have any problem with parking, but I wonder if you've heard from existing business owners in there, your customers, if they have any concerns with expansion of additional restaurant space and perhaps problems in the future with parking.
Sure. Well, to commence, my name is Dan Brink. I'm the owner of the center. To be honest, I've been caught unaware of a lot of what's happened here, okay? And I've been working very hard with Bob since March to try and correct the issues that the town has with the center, and I totally was unaware of it. I realized there was a shared parking agreement. I knew about it. There were some particulars as to how it was all measured was unclear to me, and I didn't find that out until October of last year when we lost the coffee shop, and I didn't actually meet with Bob until March of this year. And quite honestly, the meeting didn't go very well because I was totally caught off guard as to what the purpose of the meeting was, and at that point he said, well, there's all sorts of issues, one being the loading zone was removed, and again, I wasn't aware of that. I've worked very hard with Bob and with the parking consultants and with attorneys to try and come up with a solution and find a better parking loading zone for the center, one that actually works. The previous loading zone did not work. I've done a lot of work as far as myself personally, doing parking counts and talking to tenants and researching the community. I've got surveys from all the tenants in our center as well as the other two centers and inquiring whether or not they have any issues with increasing the parking, and none of them have any issues whatsoever. In fact, none of them, I've got signed petition from all of them that states that they're all quite positive in trying to get me, because they're all struggling like we are in this economy to try and survive and make the businesses work. And one of the things is that they all want, and a lot of people in the community, when I've had the center open, I've showed the coffee shop unaware that we couldn't do that. We had a lot of community people walking through the park saying, when is the coffee shop reopening? And I think it's vital to our center that we have a coffee shop, and that, quite honestly, when I bought into the center, I love Fountain Hills. I think the town is beautiful. I fell in love with the park, and I just want to do my best to try and make this work for the town as well as for the people that are in the center, because we all need this to survive.
Good. Well, thank you. And so you answered that with the, you did talk to your tenants, and they're in
I'm sorry, it was a long version of what you...
Good. Well, no, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for working with staff. And obviously, we're being sensitive to the business needs here by looking to prove the ability to have additional restaurant space, which seems to be what's desired in that area at this time. And obviously, concerns with parking probably aren't currently concerns, but when your plaza fills up and people are there and the economy is vibrant again, maybe some challenges there with parking, but in fact we probably hope there's challenges with parking because we want to have a vibrant downtown, and your plaza, Fountainside, is a beautiful part of our downtown, so we want that to be successful also. But the tenants that are there, the ones that would be impacted by potentially additional traffic, people taking up parking spaces, are in favor of the...
I think they think it's important for the vibrancy of the center to survive. I mean, we need some more people in there to bring more clientele.
Good. Any questions for applicant? Councilmember Elke.
Mr. Brink, good evening. I was curious, do you expect any more expansion beyond this 9,000 square foot of restaurant space?
I would say no. I mean, I'm happy to get that. I think that there's obviously got to be a mix of retail and restaurants. I mean, I'm happy with that number. So I at this point, have no plans of trying to expand that beyond that. I'd like to add to that, though, that, I mean, in doing all my research, a lot of research, and I've got plans from the town showing that this center and this location is ideal for restaurant space and stuff like that. And that was one of the reasons, again, why I looked at it. I think I think about European sidewalk cafes and stuff like that is what I envisioned here, but obviously the times aren't working that way. But no, to answer your question, I think we'd be happy with the 9,000 feet. And now let me just clarify, it's not just my center, okay? This impacts all three buildings on that property, okay? So there's the corner where Rosati's is part of this deal. So is the residential condos and all that retail development. So it's the three properties are impacted and are all part of this 9,000 square foot. So it's not just our center.
Councilmember Hanson.
Thank you. I didn't really have a question, but restaurant activity it goes along with what we're trying to accomplish down by the lake, to get the synergy down there. And I'm just really appreciative of staff and working with the applicants to make this happen.
Absolutely. Very good. Anyone else? Councilmember Leger? Thank you, Mr. Brink.
Bob, just a point of clarity, I just want to clarify something I thought you said earlier. With the shared parking agreement, you're stating that the public then can use the parking lot during public events, is that correct?
That was correct, yes.
And we're not talking the parking behind the center, we're talking about the parking
Both.
in front of the center?
Both.
So for example, in the past when there's been an event, there's been signs in there saying no public parking, so those signs will no longer be out there according to this agreement, is that correct?
They shouldn't have been out there before this agreement. This is only
In the
amended.
spirit of a shared parking arrangement,
Correct.
they should not be there, and I just want to clarify that. Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mr. Brink. Item 18, discussion with possible direction to staff relating to Municipal Regional Summit. Rick?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Not too long ago, I had a visit with Councilmember Elke, and he had an idea that I thought was very important and very relevant to the situation that we're in right now, and we share with the community of cities. I brought that idea to the mayor, and the mayor encouraged me to put together a proposal that it would address the possibility of holding a regional collaboration summit with our neighbors. And we've yet to identify exactly who all those individuals are or those organizations are. We have some ideas, but the premise behind this idea is that in this time of finite resources, it's required that more than ever that we find synergistic ways to share resources, to make more of what we have, to make 1 + 1 = 3 instead of just 2, to innovate together, find opportunities to share resources, to make each other's citizens' lives better. We all share a common interest in that. The purpose of this event proposed for January 13th would be exactly that, to invite our counterparts in neighboring communities to come and share, explore ideas to elevate each other's citizens' quality of life by collaborating, synergizing, and innovating. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Good. Councilmember Elke, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. I thought it was very important for Fountain Hills to showcase itself. In fact, I got in part this idea from our town clerk, who did a wonderful job hosting the meeting here recently with all the town clerks, and all the comments that she received from the other staff and clerks from other municipalities. Amazed as we all are that we live in such a wonderful community, and I thought it would be a wonderful way for us to bring other governmental entities into our town to not only learn from them and also share information that we've learned during these economic times, collaborate perhaps on some events, but also showcase our town and show off what we have out here. And perhaps by doing so, we would draw in some more convention or some other additional use of our community center, which ultimately will result in some revenues for our town. So I think it's very important that we just talk to each other and make sure that we're learning from other towns and cities, and what better way than to invite them to our house. So that was the idea behind it.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks for coming up with that and suggesting it. And we're going to look for direction possibly to staff on this item. I guess the question that Councilmember Leger probably asked, and I'll beat him to it, is what would we hear from you next, Rick, If it's some expenses related to this, would we need to get an update, or beyond this, if we give you direction to move forward with a regional summit, are we going to, what's the process? Are we going to have to be re-engaged, or is this something that you can run with without council, additional council feedback or direction?
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. In a statutory way, possibly, because the costs aren't expected to be more than negligible to present this particular event. However, in the interest of making sure that all of you are kept up to date as to who's coming and what possible topics are. In fact, Councilmember Leger had a wonderful idea of perhaps querying these individuals, jurisdictions, and trying to determine what might be most relevant for them. What would they like to possibly discuss? So that we don't start grasping for straws, we actually use the time that we have together in a very productive way. We've yet to see, for example, who would accept our invitation to come out and discuss common issues. So a lot of answers need to be are forthcoming. We do know what our intention is to I've drafted a sample agenda of what it would look like. We would, and I'll get this to you so you can look at this. What we would hope to do is have an economic outlook for 2011, possibly invite the league to give an update or a forecast, a preview of what the next session is going to look like. We would then break out into sessions that correspond with our individual positions, responsibilities, etc. So you may have managers going in one area, elected officials in another, finance, parks and rec, etc. And within these breakout sessions where we would begin to brainstorm as to possibilities, identifying possibilities for collaboration. We would reconvene and share some of the ideas, discoveries of that exercise. And hopefully we'd like to have some type of speaker at the conclusion who would talk to the values of collaboration and synergy. So, and then we would adjourn. We'd expect that the meeting would be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 4 hours long, the total experience, probably a 1 to 5 type of thing. There's a lot of questions. We haven't lined up the speakers, so our next task would be to explore the possibilities associated with speakers for the event. After we've done that, I would report back to you what I've been able to find, and we would extend the invitations to our neighboring jurisdictions. We're certainly mindful of the advantage of inviting our tribal neighbors as well as possibly those from Rio Verde, Scottsdale, Mesa. There's 6 jurisdictions total that come to mind as we discussed it, but we're open. We've even talked about possibly Payson and Tempe. So we don't want to make it so big that it becomes dysfunctional, but we certainly want to include all of our partners and those that share concerns, that may have ideas that can help our little corner of the valley.
Great. Any questions, comments? Councilmember Dickey.
Thank you. The collaboration and the sharing, I guess we would want to know what the clear outcome or the desired outcome would be from something like that. Like, are we talking about regional cooperation on projects, like you were saying, sharing resources, purchasing things together, that kind of stuff, or how technical would it be? So you answered part of my question, which was, would staff be involved? Because a lot of things we would probably be here are either very possible, or we would try to do another route if there's somebody that's there in the nitty-gritty. So that's important that the staff would be there. And I wondered if there's a model for this, or is this sort of something that is like MAG, only involving less groups? So I think it's a great idea. I'm glad that we're going to go forward, probably, and discuss this. But as we go along, to have maybe a focused idea of what we would like to see happen as a result of it, because we've all done this a lot of times where you go to these different meetings and they're really great and you're so energized, but then it kind of, what happens next? So maybe coming full circle would be great. I mean, I'd appreciate that somehow along the line while you're planning.
Sure, and thank you, Councilmember, and Councilmember Leger, smiling over there. We had a conversation exactly on this topic, and he asked me, what are the deliverables of this particular event? Well, there are some that are less tangible than others. We've talked about some of the goodwill that we can share with our neighbors. Those are definitely less touchable type of deliverables. But as far as tangible deliverables, we anticipate fully that discussions with our counterparts will lead to more discussions of initiatives that we can partner to realize over the coming year or two. This is a long-term thing. We want to build relationships. We want to open up discussion, dialogue with our neighbors. We want to discover what issues or initiatives we should partner to push ahead. Things that have come up immediately to my mind as Councilmember Elke was sharing this idea was my discussions, for example, with Fort McDowell with regard to an extension of Power Road or the Usury Road, or depending on what option or alternative you want to refer to, that came out of the Maricopa County DOT study of a few years ago relative to the extension of that road. It was stated by the tribe representative, Carol Klopatic, that she didn't anticipate we could probably move that project ahead unless we had a collaborative movement and advocacy on the part of the communities that are impacted by that road. So that immediately came to my mind, and I said, well, if that came to my mind, what other things could we possibly discuss at this type of a meeting? So I feel like if one good idea comes out of it that we can pursue, it probably would have been a worthwhile endeavor. But I suspect that there are several things that we're not doing right now, simply because we don't have a good opportunity to talk, just the local communities here. Whenever we are in a venue that would otherwise give itself to collaboration and innovation and synergy, usually that is a meeting that is so big and involves such communities that voices like Rio Verde and Fountain Hills and others, and maybe even Fort McDowell, get kind of drowned out by the other noise.
Mayor, thank you. In looking at this as far as staffing goes and what kind of action might come out of that, would it be possible for this to take the place, and I know we haven't done it as much as we used to, meeting with Scottsdale, and we did with Mesa, having lunches and breakfasts and such. Can this be looked at as, I don't want to say replacement, but almost something that we could do that fulfills some of those goals that we have, but not adding another lunches and the breakfasts and things like that, that maybe this could actually take that place.
And Councilmember Mayor, this particular idea aligns completely with a couple, not just one, but a few of the initiatives that have been identified as important by the council this year. Partnering, collaboration, those are terms peppered throughout the budget initiatives. And so, yes, to answer your question, it aligns well with what you've established to be important this year.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm excited. Showcasing Fountain Hills, is going to be a good outcome in and of itself. Obviously, when you get the relationship strengthened between peers in neighboring communities, I can't see anything but good things coming out of that. The relationships becoming stronger, sharing of best practices, and then collaboration on, regional issues that where, maybe we all don't need to buy a big, huge tractor, or whatever it might be. We can share a tractor, or who knows what it might come to. Or, perhaps ways to have greater citizen involvement. I think it'll be a great practice. And who knows, I don't think I have a whole lot of expectations other than some of those things to be touched upon, but I expect when you get good partners together like we have nearby that we might be surprised by some of the outcomes that would come out of it that we're not expecting.
Mayor, the true genesis of a fire district that I was once involved with came, I think, really hit home to me and inspired me to run with an idea of a fire district when I, for example, which was a collaborative effort, when I was at my first 4th of July parade and I saw 500-foot ladder trucks coming down our road from 5 different jurisdictions, and there wasn't a 30-foot building in any of those communities. And the chief can imagine that. There was just no need for all this equipment, certainly for 5 of them. And these things cost $1 million a piece, brand new. And so we started thinking, boy, this is kind of a waste of resources. More and more communities are coming together to, as you expressed, to share equipment in public works and other areas of the city, Parks and Rec. So as budgets tighten, collaboration, sharing is going to become more and more the order of the day.
Good. All right, so you want a motion on this? How about a motion to direct staff to move towards planning execution of a municipal regional summit?
So moved.
Second?
And any other discussion? Any public speakers on this?
No, sir.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Alke. Great idea. Item 19, consideration with possible direction town manager conduct a feasibility study into possible formation of a Fountain Hills Public Safety District. Rick?
Thank you, Mayor. And that the previous discussion kind of dovetails into this and that we have an opportunity, I think, to address a very important part of our budget and to provide long-term sustainability and diversify our budget at the same time through a vehicle that we're looking at, which would be called the Public Safety District. No work has been done into answering some of the key questions that I think we need to, from here, answer. One is what type of legislative change or vehicle would be needed in order to enable us to create such a mechanism for funding public safety. Number two, what would such an entity look like and how would it function? And number three, what would be the impact upon both our quality of service and also the citizens themselves should we go forward with the creation or the proposal for the creation of such an entity? Those are 3 very important questions that we have not employed any energy into answering as of yet. And my sole intention in putting this before you is, before we expend that energy, to get some type of indication from you as to whether you think it's worthwhile that we go forward with this and answering those questions.
Thank you, Rick. Any speakers on this item?
No, sir.
All right, and to dovetail your dovetail, we're looking to more or less, we're at ground, we're at the baseline right here. We're just really starting our dialogue. Certainly first time in public. We're looking for potentially us to give direction to staff to really do some exploratory research on what this might or might not look like, and then to come back to council to have some more substantive dialogue. Is that correct, Rick?
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay, very good. And before someone comes up with a motion, potentially, any dialogue before that? All right, Councilmember Dickey.
Thank you, Mayor. This is somewhat of a frustrating proposal to me, given what we've been going through over the last several years trying to fund our public safety. I feel a little bit like it's a kind of a manipulation of something to double back on what we tried to do before and what we could do again in a simpler way, which is basically putting a property tax, asking the citizens again to fund public safety with a property tax. We have limited resources, we have limited staff right now. This could potentially spend a lot of time looking into something like this. What would it take to change the law, changing state law and all that goes along with that, which is not only is it possible, but we'd have to follow it. And so will it involve gathering signatures, which, you know, it could potentially, or getting all the registered voters to agree to something. What's the benefit? I think I need to know what the benefit is, what outcome is realized with a public safety district that we can't get without having a special taxing district, which is what it has to be. And what is the motivation? You know, there's other places, there's places in other states, Utah, that have districts, and other, if they don't do a property tax, then they do a fee. So they could do a fee that's based on square footage, and then they have a commission or a board or whatever you want to call it, and that can actually adjust them without going to the ballot. I feel like we're looking to add possibly another layer of government, and I think if we don't pay close attention to changing the state law, we could have unintended or intended consequences that we've seen in the past, where the legislature hasn't been that helpful to cities. We'd have to bird dog the thing all session. We'd have to watch for amendments. We'd have to watch for exemptions and carve-outs for who wouldn't have to. And Councilman Contino mentioned when we first started talking about this how it seems like it's been unfair because current residents have been paying for a lot of the infrastructure and a lot of the support for this town, which was frankly the talking point for when we went to the ballot in the first place. So what's going to prevent this from being something like that, or what it will eventually likely be is a property tax? Only before we were going for about $3 million we were just going with the fire at that time. And now it would, if it's a public safety, we saw it's more like $6 million. We just looked at our budget, so we'd be potentially asking for more. It's a hole, and it's a hole that's there no matter what we call it. You can call it a district. Do you want to risk, after this goes through the legislature, that we're not the governing board? Are you willing to take the possibility that we won't be responsible for the contracts anymore or for the public safety of our citizens? If we're going to move forward in investigating this, I think we need to cap the amount of time that's taken to do this, at least for me to support it, because I think we would need a very preliminary outline of what we think it would need to be done in order to continue to do this, because I don't see how this comes out any different than somehow funding both of these things that we've been trying to fund all the while. And if you want to go back to when we went to the voters and we said, okay, we can't technically, legally say, look, this $3 million is going straight to the fire district and that's it. I mean the fire department. But this, well, not this exact council, but the council that was here took a vote, a unanimous vote to say that is the intention. That's what we're going to do. You know, you vote for us, you're supposed to, we're supposed to take votes that you should trust. And even beyond that, $3 million was so much that what else would we have done with it? It's like, that's a very big part of our budget. So if you go in and you say, look, I want to tax for $3 million or $6 million, there's really not a lot else to do with it because that's such a big part of our budget. So I'm wary. You knew I was. I spoke to you know, our firefighters and our people that I trust very much, and I'm not trying to squelch anything, but I feel like if we move forward to this, we have a responsibility to the citizens that they know this is what we're doing. And that means we're examining a property tax, very likely, or a fee or whatever to pay for public safety. So if that's what everybody knows that we're doing going forward, then we can talk about going forward.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Dickey. I think you brought us a couple of good points, and into your frustration at the beginning or concern. I think it's, you know, council members and others worked very hard previously to come to some similar resolution on getting a more sustainable funding option for basic services if it couldn't be directed specifically. So I understand that. I think made some notes on some of your items you talked about. I think even if we give direction tonight about going into this more or less exploratory research, your topics will probably be most important to bring up and have full dialogue on at our next stop. But let's talk about, I think much of what you brought up in wanting to make sure we're all in favor of going forward towards a property tax is probably true, but we don't know that yet. That's why I think we're looking to get this exploratory research. What would a public safety funding, how did we word it here in the public safety district, what would it look like? What are the options for financing something like that district? Who would lead it? Obviously, the town council and staff, in working with our partners at the fire department and rural metro and Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, has worked very well over the last few years. So, I think likely we're going to look to maintain that. But the big item that I think we're all trying to be responsible for is, given what has changed since the last election to look into a property tax, was that we had an $18 million budget. Now we have a little over a $12 million budget. Fortunately, public safety is still around $6 million. But now, instead of $12 million or so to pay for everything else, we have $6 million to pay for everything else. And we want to make sure that we maintain our number one function, which is public safety. So the funding of that is difficult to just sit back and rely upon our economy and retail sales taxes and such. So I feel it's important for us to look into this, at least at an exploratory level here initially, to get staff going. But I want to make sure we're not spinning wheels and we know what we might be stepping into. I think most of that dialogue would be at our next meeting, but I think those are making sure our partners are engaged, and obviously, we're sensitive to our partners at MCO and Rural Metro and the fire department here, and we want to make sure that they are with us and engaged through the process, so they don't feel threatened, or they're part of the process as well, because things are working well at this point. But you brought up some good points, so let's make sure we keep those going, or we have more dialogue tonight if you wish. Councilmember Hanson.
I think this is a multi-tiered process, and like when Rick was identifying three things, it starts out in a very, very general and generic, and identifying some of the most important points that if the answers came back that we looked at that and said, that's too onerous, it would stop it right there. And only upon gathering more information, then would we get down to the next level that would be a little bit more specific and get into the more nitty-gritty. So I don't think we run the risk of expending too much of staff's time if we do it that way and start out with just the main things before we really get into the real nuts and bolts.
Councilmember Leger.
Thank you, Town Manager. Rick, it appears that you've given this some thought, and I share some of the same concerns, particularly in the fact that we don't have money budgeted to move through a process like this. So help me understand, what is some of the groundwork that we need to lay? What are some of the preliminary activities that you would foresee us looking at initially that wouldn't cost us a lot of time or a lot of money, and as Councilwoman Hanson said, give us kind of an indication, is it a green light or is it a red light or is it a yellow light? So could you share with me your thinking on this?
Sure. Please? Since there currently exists no statute that supports the formation of this kind of specific entity, a lot of what we would answer about its structure, function, et cetera, would kind of roll out of our legislative research. So our step one is what needs to be installed legislatively to allow us to create this type of an entity. From there, we know a lot about what it costs to provide public safety in our town. We've been doing it quite a while out of the general fund. That's not a mystery. So piecing together what the impact would be to our citizens is not going to be that difficult to answer. Again, everything's going to revolve around, first and foremost, whether it's possible legislatively to enable such an organization or jurisdiction. If the answer to that is no, or for whatever reason that doesn't work, then that is the end of that venture, unless we determine that there's some other entity, means, or way whereby we can provide the same type of end to our efforts that is already prescribed by legislation. But I don't have any idea what that would be.
Thank you. And with respect to something the mayor said, we certainly have a number of partners that this impacts. Would there be a way to concurrently, without a large cost, begin dialoguing with those folks in terms of soliciting input around where we're going in doing these things concurrently, i.e. looking at possible legislation as well as just getting input, frankly, from our, rural metro, MCSO. We have an attorney here that can weigh in possibly on some of this as well.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts?
Yes, Councilmember Mayor, we have already identified certain stakeholders, people of responsibility within certain organizations that we think it's necessary to get their feedback. And as part of that legislative research process, it would be important to identify those who would be supportive of the creation of such an entity, and perhaps even those who might not be as enthusiastic about such an entity. So you're correct in that would really be the groundwork that we would begin to lay, trying to get feedback from those individuals who would play a role in either supporting or opposing such a organization.
And Mayor, if I may, I guess looking at it from a 30,000-foot level, this kind of falls under the umbrella for me as a possible tool to guide us along financial sustainability. As we all know, we have some serious issues that will be confronting us in the very, very near future. So in that spirit, which is critical, this is something I definitely could get behind, as the mayor had mentioned, at an exploratory stage, and as Councilwoman Hanson mentioned, looking at, are there roadblocks, what are they? And I'm sure once we start this dialogue, which we've done this evening, and it is already public, and it will be very public, probably in the newspaper as well as on Channel 11, I think a lot of questions will start happening, and we'll probably start seeing more people here. So it'd be interesting to have this discussion. So it's something I think I can support. Thank you.
Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, and thank you. In addition to finding out if it's going to require a change in the law, I think the big question in my mind is there any other way of funding it besides a property tax? Because if there isn't, I don't know why we would go through all this, because we can do that right now. And if you create a district and we do start putting something into the legislature, and then you kind of think about what's happened in the past. Look at development fees, just for example. They froze them. They want to do away with them. It wouldn't be too hard of a leap to see, okay, you can have this district, but any new development will be exempt. Or every step along the way until May 30th or whenever they're done, somebody can do something to whatever this change in law is going to be. So we would go through all of that. We'd have to have some sort of lobbyists or somebody down there. We'd have to talk to the league. We'd have to see if other cities and towns would be affected by this and whether it's something they would like you were saying. And then you could get to the point of having it either be something that we don't like at all or having it disappear after how many people that work here are trying to babysit this thing. And if it comes down to the only mechanism to really get this amount of money up is a property tax, then I think that's the number one question. Because if that's it, then we can do that right now. and we can all vote like we did before, and we can all say, this is what we're going to use it for. It's $6 million. You have a $12 million budget. What else are we going to do with it? You know, shoot champagne out of the fountain? I mean, you know, that's what we're going to do with it. So to go through all of this and go through a legislative session and whatever it's going to take to get to a point where we could do something, our next meeting if you want, we need to know what are the possibilities to generate $6 million besides the property tax, and then is that worth pursuing in that way?
Thank you, Councilmember Alfie.
Mayor, thank you. I think it's financially responsible for the town to look at all avenues, all possibilities. We're not up here making any decisions to do anything. We're just directing staff just to do a little research and see if this is a possibility. Some of the things that I heard from our residents when the property tax was voted down by large margins was they were concerned that it was just going to the general fund, and although the council may pass a resolution that we're only going to use this for fire and police, or for fire, I believe it was at the time, there was no restrictions on that. And I think something along these lines may place some restrictions on what those funds are being used for, which may in fact then give the residents some confidence and knowledge that if it does involve a property tax, that these are going strictly for fire and police services, and this can't be allocated for streets, it can't be allocated for legal, it can't be allocated for anything else, which is a bit different than what happened in the past. So I think that that's important, and again, we're just at a preliminary stage, and I think it's very important for the staff, if this involves the town's financial sustainability for the next 10, 15, 20 years to come, I think we should be investing a lot of resources in that, in at least looking at this at this stage. I think it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're at this point because where the budget's brought us to, and having it over the last 3 years, once you carve out public safety and our partners, we have to continue to acknowledge them of being working so hard to keep their costs flat and even a little lower than what they were over the last year, and delivering the same level of service. We have to thank them tremendously for being there for us through a very difficult time, and for them to make the sacrifice they've had to help us through this as a community as well. But the fact is, over the last 3 years or so, outside of public safety, if you remove that from our budget, to fund everything else, parks and streets and all, has dropped more than 40%. So how much more can you go and maintain the quality of life that the people in Fountain Hills really enjoy? And of course, we don't expect public safety to necessarily get cheaper. And we know our community values public safety a great deal. We talk a lot about it, and we work hard to ensure we have the best services for our residents at a good price. So it's just we're really forced into this dialogue, I think, and we have to look at it, and we have to also look at what we learned in previous attempts and understand what the citizens where they were coming from and what their concerns were, so that they're with us the whole way. But the next dialogue, and that's what I'll ask you next, is when do you think we might have another dialogue? It will be where we'll really probably get into some more nitty and gritty details around potentially what we're looking at or what the options might be. Would that be 2 months from now? More than that? What do you suspect, Rick?
Mayor, Council, a little bit difficult question to answer, but I will say that we will work with all speed to thoroughly and ferret out the information that we need to bring you back, so you can make a more informed decision. You can be more comfortable with the direction we're going. So we don't want to go so fast that we miss answers and we leave gaping holes behind us, and we want to fill all the holes. But at the same time, we understand that time is of the essence, that this is something that we need to be proactive about and move forward. We don't expect that the next fiscal year and the year after is going to bring back the prosperity necessarily that we saw in the budget in the earlier part of the last decade, but so that we need to move quickly. And the short answer to your question is that I would expect that within 30 to 45 days, we could probably bring you back some real answers.
And perhaps would we, Councilmember Leger whispered work study, so we can actually spend some time and focus on
Certainly.
that topic. Is that maybe something to consider?
Absolutely.
All right. So from council, what do you need? You looking for a motion from us to
Probably November work study.
November?
Yeah, I'm having communication with those who keep the agendas, and that would probably be the most appropriate at this time.
Okay. Anyone want to make a motion to direct staff? Sounds like most folks are leaning towards that being the right way to go. All right. Direction to, we have a motion to direct staff towards looking at public safety funding. And a second?
Second.
All right, any other questions?
Mayor?
Yes,
the motion
Councilmember
was
Dickey?
to have staff look towards financing public safety? Is that what you just said?
Well, let's make sure we're clear enough, so.
That sounds good to me.
Okay, which would include, obviously, we have in our packet tonight, public safety district. That would also be a part of that, but I think right now we need to keep our net open, is to understand what the options are for public safety funding.
Oh.
Very good. So that motion all right with council?
Yeah.
It is. All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor, 7-0.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Next item, discussion with possible action related to proposed resolutions by the 2010 Resolutions Committee to be considered for adoption at their Thursday, August 26, 2010 business meeting. This is an item that was forwarded to you in advance of the packet, so you have some time to look at it. It happens every year at the League of Cities and Towns. The League is a statewide body. Some items may not relate to Fountain Hills, some do. Some are specific to one region or municipality in particular. So you've been forwarded those items, and it's also this is also relative to a discussion we'll also have at a future council meeting or work study around when I or someone that I appoint goes to regional meetings or represents the town in essence at these meetings, like I will at the resolution meeting with the League of Cities and Towns. I want to make sure the council's engaged and aware of what we're doing, and that I'm not just there speaking on behalf of myself and hoping that I'm in alignment with council. So we'll have a separate discussion on that role that I largely have with regional meetings and such. But specifically tonight, we have coming up next week the League of Cities and Towns annual conference in Glendale this year. I'm sure most all of us will be there, and we'll learn quite a bit. But the first item of business is the resolutions meeting, which everyone has in their packet. And I wanted to just forward it to everyone and see if there's anything that I also have staff looking at these items as well to give me feedback. But if council has any particular feedback, the format in the summary sheets that the league put together, they have resolutions that they've received from cities and towns. Some of them they are recommending action on, some of them are recommending non-action on, and some have been withdrawn. But those items particularly that are recommended for adoption, I wanted to see if council had any feedback for me, and you could share it with me here or otherwise. Councilmember Dickey.
I do. Surprise.
But keep in mind, these are statewide items. They may not relate to Fountain Hills.
I wanted to let you know some of the
Yeah.
thoughts that I had, and then you will be there to make the decisions. Just a general statement about the LTAF funds. Hopefully, I know that both of these proposals look good. There's a chance that the LTAF funds will be restored at some point because you probably already know this, but the air quality, the EPA has not accepted some of the air quality measures that were taken. So there's a suit now that I feel will end up saying that the removal of the LTAF funds actually violated the SIP, the State Implementation Plan, for the air quality, and so you're not allowed to mess around with the SIP unless you do something that would, offset that. So that hopefully, and it's good that it's there, but that might be hopefully something that won't have to be pursued by the league. I had a question about the political sign thing, and just to be mindful that they don't try to force everybody to do the same thing as far as allowing them, because this is I understand what they're trying to do. I think they're trying to make them uniform and some degree of uniformity, but
Councilman Dickey, which number?
number 6, it's actually on their sheet, the league sheet, the pink, the yellow one. It's number 6, it says political signs. So just to make sure it's not something that forces you to do something you don't want to do. It looks like they're trying to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
You see it?
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing was the quarters. The Bullhead City, Havasu City has those. They're going to be asking for some leniency, I think, on state trust land for roads. So just kind of keep in mind. See if anybody mentioned how do the schools feel about that. How does the environmental community feel about that? And did the state land department weigh in on that? I'd be curious to know if this is okay with all of them. And that one is number 9, the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Hanson.
On resolution number 1, something just kind of jumped out at me, and Julie, maybe you noticed this one. It was about defending cities' rights to self-collect transaction privilege tax by contracting with a private third party. And they referred to several years ago that the city of Bullhead City went with a private business that provides local governments across the country the service of administering local sales tax collection. And apparently they've had some really good luck with that. So the city isn't doing it themselves, but they contract with this outside agency, so the state would no longer be doing it. And they felt that they gained greater accuracy and probably got more of the funds that were owed to them. And I guess there was House Bill 2512 that might be attempting to make it so that cities and towns cannot use a third-party business to do this. So number 1, I just thought this maybe sounded like a good idea, something to look into,
And so,
rather than having the state do it,
yeah,
if there's benefits to it.
yeah. If that's been tried, and maybe there's good data out there to show that. And if you remember, maybe 6 months ago, maybe longer than that, we had a younger man come forward, called to the public, and said, watch the state on their collections of transaction privilege taxes and ensure that they have the staff to do the job. And he was concerned that perhaps they don't, and that there are some things falling short. But I'm not sure if there's data to show that. But obviously, they have the ability to have a municipality collect their own. Would be a right that'd be nice to maintain.
Or have the private third party do it.
Oh, correct.
So it wouldn't put the onus on staff.
Yeah, or contract somebody to do it. Julie, you have comments on that item? I know you've talked about that one.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Hanson, because that exactly is the one I was looking at. However, I have a little bit of a different take on it. First of all, cities and towns, well, Fountain Hills, we don't contract with anybody to collect our sales tax. We're what's called a program city, which means the Department of Revenue collects our sales tax and they don't charge us anything for it. The other option that cities have is to self-collect, to have a tax department, which is what is obviously we're not big enough for that. So we have Department of Revenue. There was the House bill that I believe the Arizona Tax Research Association, which is ATRA, is trying to stop the legislature from allowing third-party vendors to come in and do sales tax collections. Now, specifically the one in Bullhead City, I had gone to their presentation probably about 3 years ago, and this is the outfit that the League of Cities and Towns is partnered with. And part of their sales pitch is that they will be a little more aggressive and do more than the Department of Revenue can do, and their pitch is that, then you would collect more. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but the objection that I would have to it is if cities and towns are going to pay more to have their sales tax collection and have the Department of Revenue, or have somebody do a better job, why not keep it in the state and pay the Department of Revenue to do it? In other words, we would, if we contracted with this vendor that the League is partnered with, they're based in Georgia, I believe, and they keep a piece of what they do collect. So I don't know whether they would collect more or not. They say they would, but I don't know that the Department of Revenue is not doing a good enough job along with our sales tax auditor. The Department of Revenue invested a lot of money in a new system, and things have gotten a lot better. So I realize that if this does go through and the legislature adopts it, it doesn't really affect us because we have the choice to stay with the Department of Revenue or go with the outside third party. But again, you know, my philosophical opinion is if we're going to pay somebody to collect our sales tax, why wouldn't we keep the jobs and everything in Arizona as opposed to paying a company that's outside of the state? Additionally, there is, ATRA obviously is opposed to this, and they have some issues about the confidentiality statutes. And as the council knows, we're very protective of that information, that we don't give out any information, taxpayer information. Well, I'm not sure that a third-party contractor, and this is ATRA's complaint, is under those same confidentiality statutes. I don't know if they would transfer over to a third party. So that's one of their concerns. And again, you know, we don't pay anything right now. You know, Department of Revenue provides the service for us. And if we're going to pay somebody, I would rather pay somebody in the state. I'd rather pay the Department of Revenue so that they can hire more staff to do, you know, a better job.
Well, they pitch it pretty good in here. When they say increase sales tax, increase accuracy and efficiency, they make it sound like a pretty good deal.
They do have to be reliant upon the Department of Revenue for a lot of the information, I would think, this private organization orders, because that's where it all starts there. I mean, that's where people, the dollars go first before they get distributed back out to the municipalities. I would think there'd still be great reliance on the Department of Revenue, but we need to also make sure, and perhaps the resolution talks specifically about a private third party, but it seems like it'd be more important at least to cover the rights of the municipalities to collect how they choose, rather than, particularly if there's risk of the legislature taking that choice away. That would be more important than actually just specifying that a third party can do it. We want to make sure we protect the rights of the local communities to determine how they necessitate this function of government. Okay, good.
But thank you, Julie, for the additional information, because that clearly wasn't in this summary sheet.
No, it wasn't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Leger. Sure.
I've had an opportunity to go through these, and there's quite a bit of them, and I'm not sure if you're looking for consensus or just input. So I'll just give you some input then. We'd be here all night.
There's a lot of feedback.
We'd be here all night if we were voting on each of these. So I think just a general statement, and if you look at this document, we're all familiar with the League of Cities, and their vision is really to keep control with local government and to shield us from that. So in essence, in general, most of what they put out here, I think, with a few exceptions, does benefit local municipalities. But with that being said, there were a couple here I think that jumped out that more specifically would benefit us, so I'll kind of start there and go through a handful of these. I could see strongly supporting item number 3, resolution number 3, where the state designates fund for permanent funds for transportation. I think that would be important. This one may be controversial, but number 11 I would strongly support, which opposes extending impact fee moratoriums.
Can you clarify that? 11? Oppose extension? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said you in favor of extending moratoriums.
No, I'm in favor of what they're proposing here in number 11.
Well, yeah, again, local control of local impacts.
Yeah. Let's see here. It was number 2/12. It's to protect funding for the Heritage Fund. As we all well know, Heritage Funding supports our state parks, and we all recently had an opportunity to meet with the Director of Tourism from the state out at the Tribe, and they're really concerned about monies being pulled from the state parks because that contributes greatly to our economy, not only locally but statewide. So I think 212 is one I feel strongly about recommending a support. 12/2, restore lottery funds for local transportation, would support that. 610, a retention of existing state economic development tools and programs. I would support that one or suggest support of that one. Number 22 gives local municipalities the authority or right, not sure correct terminology, to publish all public documents on the website, and that would save us substantial amount of money locally in terms of labor cost as well as just real time cost. Let's see here. In number 14, I would suggest support of that as well. It empowers our city clerk to during an election to nullify any signatures on a petition that are on a petition prior to the date of having your organization intact. I think that's black and white. There's no big judgment there, and also gives us the city clerk the ability to X out a signatures from outside of the a signature that may come from another town. And if I may defer to our town clerk, number 14, is that something you would feel comfortable with administering if that was true?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's currently on the non-recommended by the subcommittee that is coming forward to talk about the resolution. So that's
was that one nixed off?
that's one of those. It's still before the resolution committee, but
Yeah.
it is on the non-recommended list. I don't know why.
Yes. Okay. Well, that would be one that I would agree to disagree on and recommend.
Okay, I'll ask about it.
It's
I'll
just
get back with you on that. And
it's
maybe
just,
that.
yeah, it's not something I'm that passionate about. I think it's just a routine.
This clerk can't be trusted, perhaps.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, Bev. Kathy, kidding.
Excuse me?
I'm just kidding.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Henry. Or Councilman Leger. All right. Any other comments on the resolutions? And obviously, these aren't putting rules necessarily in place. It's trying to guide, I think, the league staff on what they're to do with their time and working with the legislature and other things. Is that a good way to explain it, maybe, Andrew? Just kind of helping them formulate their goals and their guidelines as to how to best represent the communities?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's precisely that. It's the League Resolutions Committee was designed to try and give the league director and his or her staff some direction from the entire league prior to entering the legislative session. So the process has been refined to what you have before you, that they're vetted and brought before the entire group at the Resolutions Committee, that you can actually take affirmative action, either yea or nay on each one that's been recommended, and then some other things that people bring up at the time, so that the league staff will have an agenda moving forward that's not just defending all the things that might be introduced by others.
Good. And now, since you're speaking, I wonder if staff has any input on any of these items outside of what's been shared already. Rick, any other items or staff input on these resolutions?
Outside of resolution number 1, no.
All right. Andrew, anything?
Clearly, it would be nice to not extend the development fee moratorium any longer than it already is.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for that, and keep this dialogue in mind when we talk about, like what I mentioned earlier, us perhaps in a work study or in some format talking about how at regional meetings and such I can best represent Fountain Hills. So, thank you. My next item is, I don't think we need a motion on that last item. Do we? We don't need a motion. We're not looking for a motion.
As long as the council is comfortable that you'll exercise reasonable judgment.
Thank you.
At Resolutions Committee.
That's a lot to ask for.
Oh, my God.
All right. Item 21, council discussion direction of the town manager. Rick, anything there?
No, sir, no, beyond what I've already mentioned.
Okay. 22, council request of, and report on recent activities by town manager. Councilmember Dickey.
Mayor, I wanted to thank Rick and Julie because I had asked them about some phone protocol and as far as having people be able to call and reach somebody live, and with all the challenges that we've had with staffing recently, they came up, they did some additional training, and they've also changed the messages a little bit to clarify how somebody can reach somebody when they call, so I just wanted to thank them. Appreciate it.
Good, good. And also on that note, lifting up staff some more, we talked about the Shea project. Our own town manager and other staff members were out there addressing traffic congestion issues and taking action in light of perhaps non-action from the contractors out there along Shea to help move traffic along. And I received a lot of phone calls. I had received one email that was somebody was in there, obviously on their BlackBerry in their car, and maybe other council members saw that, and complaining about the traffic because at that point they were backed up at 130th or 24th Street on Shea coming in with the improvements. But by the time they got to Palisades, they saw their town manager out there moving barricades and other staff helping to relieve traffic, and they sent another email saying, forget my last email. You guys are doing a great job trying to make things.
They call him a gem.
A gem, yeah, so, thank you, staff.
J-I-M, though. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, so thanks, staff. Obviously, they pointed out Rick because they recognize him, but I know there are a lot of other staff members out there helping with that, and along with the other project that was dealing with rain and tough environment out there down by the wash towards Four Peaks Elementary School. So thanks for working hard on those big capital projects, ones in which, particularly on Shea, we're relying upon ADOT to manage, but here it is within our community, so the impacts are direct to us. Thanks for doing that, and with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Mayor? Just one thing that I did forget, and it'll be in the avenues coming up as well, but if our citizens are looking for the recycle bins that used to be over here in the town hall complex, they can check out the Kiwanis building, and they have some recycle bins over there as well. So we have yet one more recycling location. We'll try to update from time to time in the avenues where recycling can be done around town, and try to spread that ability around so it can be as convenient as possible.
And there's a website as well, correct? It's tried to be
there is
kind of active. Is it fountainhillsrecycles.com, or do you remember what the domain name is?
I would give the wrong one. Do you have it?
It's fountainhillsrecycling.com.
Recycling.com. Good, thank you very much. So, great, and obviously recycling that's going on now helps support a lot of the local organizations which fund a lot of important projects here in Fountain Hills, close to our hearts. So, that, look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
Hi, sir. Oh, sure, Karen. Let me hop down and talk to you. You're sitting so long.